Revolution 2025 is in the books, and AEW delivers again. Knocked another one out of the park here. We just got finished watching it on the watch along, and man, that was a bonkers pay-per-view. Some wild matches on this show, and it absolutely lived up to the hype. This was an excellent AEW pay-per-view. I'm curious to see what you guys think of it, because these pay-per-views rarely disappoint from AEW, and I kind of had a feeling based on the card that we could see that this was going to be a hell of a show, but, you know, they still have to execute that show, and sometimes things happen and things aren't as good as you think they're going to be, but this one really, really delivered, and all of the matches that I was looking the most forward to me, delivered the most, and even a couple of them surprised me, and I was very anxious and excited to see Mariah May and Toni Storm finish their saga, but I didn't expect it to be as good as it was, and I think I'm going to rank that match as my favorite of the night, although it's right up there with the steel cage match too, Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher. I'm not a big fan of like overuse of blood and too much violence and stuff like that, but in these two cases, I was fine with both of them. And I think in the Toni Storm and Mariah May match, Toni Storm accidentally bladed a little bit too hard. She gigged the hell out of herself, and her blood was flowing, and you could see that she was kind of mad at herself in the match. Like, that could have ruined the match for her. That could have screwed up her vision or whatnot, but it ended up playing in perfectly to how everything finished off, and that just final shot of them laying on top of each other on the stage. My God, that was so good. So that's definitely my match of the night. Close second to Fletcher and Ospreay, and the opener, MJF and Hangman, was also very good. The main event, I feel like, is probably going to be viewed by a good portion of the audience as a letdown. I don't consider it to be a letdown because I just didn't think ending Moxley's run here, even though we're kind of over the Death Riders, at this point, I would rather have them see it through than make a knee-jerk reaction to, you know, fan response and do a quick title change here, which makes you have to rework some of your plans that have already been in place. I felt like at this point, I could wait another couple of months for Moxley to finally lose the belt, probably to Darby Allin when he comes back. So I predicted him to win here, but we thought there could be some swerves. We could see Christian come out, which we did. We could see a Jay White heel turn. We could see a Wheeler Yuta babyface turn. We could see the return of Killswitch. We could see the return of Wardlow. There were a lot of things being tossed around in the main event. Ultimately, we didn't see anything other than Christian showing up to cash in the contract, making the match a triple threat, and then getting choked out to lose the match. So Cope didn't even have to get beat by Moxley here, which makes me think they might still have another match at some point. Now, Swerve Strickland is the new number one contender for the AEW World title because he beat Ricochet tonight, and at the end of the main event, as Moxley is leaving, Nana confronts him, and Swerve dives off the balcony onto Moxley, letting you know, I got next. So I'm curious to know if they're going to book that match for Wrestle Dynasty, because that's where Swerve won the title last year, or if they just get this done on Dynamite. Not really sure yet. But overall, I'm giving the pay-per-view an A. I enjoyed the pay-per-view. When I look at the card here, there's not a single match on there that I think didn't deliver. There was nothing special about the Outrunners and the Hurt Syndicate, but that's what I was expecting. I wasn't expecting anything special. Mercedes and Momo Watanabe slightly exceeded the expectations I had for it. Brody King and Okada was right in line with where I thought it would be, and so was Swerve and Ricochet, so was Hangman and MJF. And Toni Storm and Mariah May, I think, exceeded their expectations. Fletcher and Ospreay exceeded them a tad, although I knew that match was going to be bonkers. And I think maybe the main event was somewhat of a letdown because they weren't doing the crazy things we had seen earlier on in the night. This was all going to be about the finish. And they did tie Christian in there. We now have that contract that is no more. We don't have to worry about that hanging over our heads as he failed miserably to cash that thing in. And we can move on from that. Overall, it was a great show that delivered. I got every penny of my $50 worth out of this, and that's all I ask out of any pay-per-view from any company that I buy. Just give me my money's worth. They did. They usually do with AEW. No matter how, down in the dumps they seem to be, the pay-per-views deliver. And that's largely, I think, what's just keeping them strong, keeping them alive, because, if they got to weather, attendance issues or ratings issues or whatnot, that doesn't change the fact that they got a hell of a talent roster there, every bit as talented as the other side, and they can do some crazy things. And I like my wrestling promotions, especially when you have two competing wrestling promotions, to do things that the other isn't doing. And so the bad faith, asswads are going to be online today, right now, and tomorrow, complaining about the amount of blood. Oh, it's too much. It's too many spots. It's too much this. It's too much that. If that's what you have to do, then you're not really a wrestling fan. I like AEW. I like that AEW will give us a little bit more violence and a little bit more craziness. Screwdrivers to the face, Spanish flies off the top of cages. Yeah, I know that's dangerous, but we're not the ones doing it. They are. And that's the style they want to work. I can appreciate that style just as much as I can appreciate a good storytelling match in the ring. There are lots of different styles you can work. Too much blood, too many kickouts, whatever. I think all of those opinions should be judged, in a case-by-case basis. Sometimes in a match, I will feel like the blood is excessive. Sometimes in a match, I will feel like we're getting too many kickouts. But I didn't have those feelings in Ospreay and Fletcher. I liked it. The crazier, the better. I don't have a problem with that. It's not ruining wrestling. It's not realistic or anything like that. All that stupid shit that fans try to do to make themselves feel smarter, you're not. And these matches can be fun if you just learn to appreciate them. If you haven't noticed, the business isn't dying. Crazy spots. People have been saying people are killing the business for 30 years, and the business is strong as ever. So shut the fuck up. It was all fun and games, and it was a fun night of wrestling. That's all I ever want when it comes down to watching pay-per-views on TV. I like in WWE, we get things that you don't see in AEW. And I like in AEW, you get things that you don't see in WWE. You don't want your companies doing the same shit. And there's no right way to do things and no wrong way to do things. There's lots of styles, lots of variety. Some matches have no blood. Some matches have a lot. Some matches have no kickouts. Some matches have a lot. Some are short. Some are long. Some are slow. Some are fast. Some are high flying. Some are mat-based. It's all pro wrestling. And we got a good variety tonight. With Edge and Moxley or Cope and Moxley wrestling more ground-based game. Ospreay and Fletcher having a match on fucking Mars. Toni Storm and Mariah May with that beautiful story with some of the best images you could ever ask for in a feud. This was a good show. And what's even great and better about this, about being a wrestling fan, is guess what the next show is? WrestleMania. So there have been worse times to be a wrestling fan. So if you're online or anywhere right now saying anything negative about what you saw tonight, get therapy and get laid, because tonight was a hell of a show. Enjoyed it immensely. So I'm going to give it an A. A lot of you guys are giving it B's, A's, 9.5s, B+. I can go with a B+. 8.3, I respect that. But I certainly wouldn't give this pay-per-view any lower than a B. It was solid from top to bottom. So we're about to get into it here. If you don't mind, I will be answering all of the super chats. So they are open. If you send them, we will get to those in just a little bit. In the meantime, smash that thumbs up button. Make sure you subscribe if you have not yet already. And make sure you're here tomorrow night. I don't have a link up yet, but we are going to be here to watch that big Madison Square Garden Monday Night Raw that's going to be headlined by a big steel cage match, CM Punk and Seth Rollins. I feel like that match is going to be good, but it's going to be nothing like we saw between Ospreay and Fletcher tonight. That shit was nuts. I did not even see the 0 hour. The only 0 hour match that I predicted was the one that I knew about, involving Mark Briscoe, Orange Cassidy, and the Boom AJ. The Rizzler was out there dressed like Orange Cassidy. He was at ringside with the Little Justice, and the Little Justice got in the ring and power bombed, I think, Mansoor or something, or one of them MXM collection guys. And Jonathan Television was out there tongue kissing his wife. It was a mess. In the end, the babyfaces got the win, and I got that match correct. We opened up the show. We were curious what match we were going to open with, and we opened with Hangman Page against MJF. That kind of surprised me. And forgive me, as my review here is going to be very kind of informal, because I just took basic notes here. We're just going to talk about the show as a whole. But if you want a spot-by-spot recount of these matches, you're not going to get that here, because I was watching them with you, and I wasn't jotting down notes. I'm only jotting down the matches and the winners and the finishes. That's it. But this match was fun and good. It didn't get bloody. It didn't get too bonkers. I thought we could see some blood here, considering that MJF tried to light Hangman Page on fire on Dynamite, and we know some of the craziness that Hangman Page can do when he is provoked, and I thought that he didn't get crazy enough in this match, to be honest. Now, I had said that this is just the first match in the saga between these two guys, and I assume this is going to be a 2 or 3 pay-per-view ordeal here, but the finish was largely clean for the most part. I mean, I don't know if you can really call this match super clean when you're having tombstones on chairs. That was the damnedest spot I had ever seen. MJF has got Hangman Page in tombstone position on the outside of the ring. There's a folding chair sitting in folding chair position. It's not folded up or anything. It's there, and nobody's sitting in it. And MJF then jumps and tombstones Hangman onto the seat of the chair, and it just looked sick, like absolutely sick. Also, what was the move? And was it the Stormbreaker or whatever Hangman had MJF up in? He came down and he landed right on his face. And I really hope he's okay, because that was the nastiest bump I think I've ever seen. So between that bump that MJF took and the tombstone on the chair, this match had some crazy stuff. In the end, all it took was a buckshot lariat to get it done. Hangman Page pinning MJF and getting the win. I thought MJF would pull a fast one here, get a win. Then we'd do a rematch, maybe with a stip, and things would get a little bit more nuts. But I don't know if this is all MJF is. We're going to hear from MJF on this issue, if he's going to tuck his tail and run, or if he's still going to be targeting Hangman Page. And my belief that this could be a several match program might not be true, since Hangman won virtually definitively here in my mind. So Hangman gets the win, and that is the only match on the entire pay-per-view that I predicted incorrectly. And even in my predictions, I said I'm not confident about MJF and Hangman. I thought it was a toss-up, and I picked the wrong one. But I picked the right one on everything else, including the next match, Mercedes Moné successfully defending her TBS championship against Momo Watanabe. This match slapped. This was a banger. I wasn't sure. I knew it wasn't going to be bad. They had a good one before, and I've seen a couple of Momo's matches, and I didn't think it was going to be a stinker or anything, but it exceeded my expectations. Even went about maybe 3 to 5 minutes longer than I thought it would. And Mercedes was on the ropes a couple times. Momo is tough as nails, and she wound up eating a moneymaker that Mercedes immediately rolled into her bank statement, or her statement, whatever they call it now, the money statement, the CEO statement, whatever it was, to tap out Momo in a really hard fought and really hard hitting match. Momo had some blood on her. Mercedes was taking some shots in there from the very, very strong Momo. And it was a good match, really good match. Mercedes Moné retains. During that match, by the way, you had Billy Starks up in the skybox there, or something, like jotting down notes. Like, why wouldn't you just take your phone out and put your notes on here, or speak it into your thing? Who writes shit down these days? Oh, I do. I have a pen right here. But she was taking notes. That was pretty funny. Match number 3 was Swerve Strickland versus Ricochet. This is a number 1 contenders match to determine the challenger for the World Heavyweight Championship. Now, they were teasing that maybe we could see a Prince Nana heel turn here, as he was issuing ultimatums to Swerve about regaining that robe. And he says, I can't even stay with you if you can't get it back, or whatever. So they're kind of playing into that a little bit. And during the match, as Ricochet gets the upper hand on Swerve, who, by the way, had an awesome entrance. Swerve looked great. He kind of had his ponytail up really high. Buddy, what are you doing? Had his ponytail up really high. Drum solo going along with his theme music during the entrance. It was all really, really good. So he looked awesome. But during the match, when Ricochet kind of took control, Nana gets pissed and leaves. And I immediately called bullshit on that. I'm like, okay, he wouldn't turn heel and then tease it with him leaving first. If he was going to turn heel, he'd hit Ricochet or hit Swerve with a chair and, shock the crowd or whatever. So he kind of leaves. And I thought that maybe it was just Swerve and Nana trying to make Ricochet believe that Nana is turning. So I knew we would see him come back later on, and we did when Swerve has got Ricochet down. Nana comes out and grabs the robe, regains the robe, but then Ricochet nails him and takes the robe back. And then Swerve winds up getting it back and hits a couple of house calls in the ring to Ricochet's face that he kicks out of. And then, I didn't write down the finish. How did Swerve win this match? Was this the roll-up one? No, Kenny was the roll-up. Swerve, after the 2 house calls that Ricochet kicks out of, I believe just hits his finisher, right? And puts him down for the win, but he beats Ricochet. It was a really good match and a really competitive match where at least twice I thought Ricochet was actually going to win. And I kept thinking about the main event, because I felt like if Cope, wins and beats Moxley in the main event, it would make sense for Ricochet to win here, because he'd have a babyface champion to challenge. So since we didn't know the outcome of the main event yet, I was like, well, shit, I could see Ricochet winning. In the end, it did turn out to be Swerve, put down Ricochet, and he will be the next challenger to Jon Moxley. Vertebreaker, thank you, Doug Unfunny. And he'll be Jon Moxley's next challenger. I think it'll be cool if they did it at Wrestle Dynasty, considering that's where Swerve got his big title shot last year. But they might just do it on TV. Either way, I'm fine with that. Fun match and a match that delivered. Now, with the scissor buildup here, I was surprised we didn't see any blood. Now, granted, we saw a lot of it in those other two matches, so you don't want to have blood in every match. But the fact that we didn't get any in Hangman and MJF, considering how violent things kind of got on Wednesday between those two, and considering how violent things have been between Swerve and Ricochet, I kind of thought we'd see some blood there. Unless did we see a little bit on Swerve? We might have, but I don't think we did. So not a ton of blood yet so far on the show. Kazuchika Okada was up next defending his Continental Classic Championship against Brody King. I really like Brody King in the long gear. This match was a match that was very good, and it delivered, and it was about as good as I thought it was going to be. It wasn't going to be crazy. Wasn't going to be like what we would see from Toni and Mariah and from Ospreay and Fletcher later on. It kind of, in the ring, gave me exactly what I thought. Maybe a little bit of a flat finish with the Rainmaker for the win. Maybe could have been set up better, in the preceding sequence. I don't know. But overall, fine match. Didn't think Brody would pick up the win here because I'm kind of hoping they are putting Okada and Kenny Omega on a collision course for All In Texas, where they can do a unification match for that Continental Classic and International Championship titles in a stadium show here in North America between those two. That would be fantastic. So I'm hoping that we get that at All In. Our other, the biggest, I should say, throwaway match of the night had to be Hurt Syndicate versus Outrunners. Nobody was expecting the Outrunners to get the win here. I said during the entrances that I hope the Outrunners have a nice spirited match here. They get the Hurt Syndicate a little backed up once or twice, but then they snap out of it and they put them down. That's exactly the way it went. Hurt Syndicate, Bobby, and Shelton were not really taking these guys very seriously. They got knocked around a little bit, knocked out of the ring, and MVP kind of chewed them out. What the fuck, dudes? Get your ass in there and take care of business. They did. They got their act together and finished off the Outrunners to retain the titles in no surprising outcome whatsoever. And up next, man, I got to say, I think this one exceeded expectations. The Hollywood ending match between Toni Storm and Mariah May for the AEW Women's Championship. They had a lot of stuff set up on the stage, some champagne glasses and a table and some other stuff. And Mariah May makes her entrance first, and then Toni Storm comes out next, and Mariah charges the ramp, and they start going at it on the ramp. So they're already beating the hell out of each other, taking bumps, knocking the table over. Toni Storm even sit-down power bombs Mariah May off the stage onto the table. The exact same bump that Bubba Ray Dudley gave to Mae Young all those years ago. Exact same bump. And that was early. That was like in the first few minutes of the match. They recover to find their way to the ring. And I don't remember where the spot happened, but Toni Storm was the first one to blade. And I think it was something on the outside of the ring, and the camera picks it up, and they see her, and she is just instantly covered in blood. And you could see where it was coming. It was right in the middle of her head is where she gigged herself, but she went way too deep, and it wasn't as bad as Eddie Guerrero in that one match with JBL, but it was close. I mean, it was like doing that streaming thing down her face. At one point in the match, she's wiping her head and she goes, fuck, and you knew that fuck wasn't in character. That was her saying, I overdid it. I might have really jeopardized this match because it's pouring in her eyes. She can't see. She's constantly going like this. And I was worried that this was going to be a problem. Luckily, the blood, kind of subsided a little bit. She remained a crimson mask throughout the whole thing. Her whole entire face was red, but it wasn't like squirting out of her face. So it kind of calmed down a little bit to where she was able to finish the match, and they were able to do all the crazy things they had planned, including the blood sports spot where they pull out 2 buckets of broken glass. They tape their fists up. They dump their fists in the glass and they start going at it. And Toni Storm starts rubbing her fist on Mariah May's head. Now Mariah is busted wide open. Now they've now taken the buckets of glass and dumped the broken glass on the mat where we are now going to be taking bumps on it and things like that. And they were both just completely, just the blood on both of them, the blood on Toni Storm, all up and down her body, all over the mat, mixed in with the glass and all that shit. Finally, they find themselves outside of the ring again. They're back up to the stage because you knew that table that was there, that was set up, knocked over, set back up, had to be used for a spot at some point. Turns out it was going to be the finish. They come all the way up to the top of the ramp. And if you remember the Triple H and Cactus Jack street fight in Madison Square Garden, not at the Royal Rumble, on Raw in 1997. And the finish was Cactus pile driving Triple H through the table on the stage. Pretty much the same finish here. Mariah May gets picked up by Toni Storm and she hits her with a pile driver on the table. She lays perfectly on top of her in a heap. 1, 2, 3. Unbelievable finish. And the way Toni Storm did not move, and you get this like wide pullback shot of these two women, bloody and broken, laying on top of each other like they had just finished making passionate love. It is the cherriest of cherry on tops that you could ever ask for in a feud. You know, because so far, everything that they've done has been phenomenal for the past couple of years, or the past year, 2, or over a year, however long it's been. And every chapter has almost been better than the next. They've had, from that initial turn when Mariah May turned on Toni Storm after the Owen and fucked her up and then won the title from her, and then Toni getting nuts, you know, and playing that role of the rookie and then coming back to win the title. And now this is essentially going to be our blow off. And that image of the two of them, like they had just been in a car accident, and these are just two corpses laying there, was pretty powerful stuff. I mean, that's exactly how you want to end something like this, because I would have hated to look back so fondly on this program between these two and then for this final match to shit the bed. You knew it wouldn't, because Mariah May and Toni Storm are excellent at what they do, and I trust them whenever they're in the ring together or doing anything together. That sit down with Renee Paquette on Dynamite was terrific. Even Toni Storm getting attacked on the red carpet of the Queen of the Ring premiere. That's good stuff. Everything that they have done has been money. So I should have had confidence in them that they would do fine in this. But it's like, I almost couldn't imagine a better outcome. I literally cannot imagine a better way for this whole thing to end than the way it ended right here. Nobody could write that any better. Plus, the ladies executed this to perfection. It's one thing to write it in the writing room and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. It's another thing to go out and execute it. That's why I have so much respect and was so proud of Bianca and Naomi on SmackDown, because it's one thing to be in the back and talk about what you're going to go out there and say. You have to do it and make it good and believable. And they crushed it on Friday night. And I feel the same way about Toni and Mariah here. You know, this feud has been too good to fuck up at the end. And even I didn't think it would end as good as it did. So if we're going to hear any stupid blood discourse, that's all in bad faith. I think fans need to stop pretending that these things aren't good or right or whatever. Nobody wants to have crimson masks in 9 out of your 9 matches. Nobody is saying that. But when you have blood, even when it's excessive, in the right setting, I have no issue with it. I don't care if, you know, somebody loses a limb if it makes it entertaining. So I don't consider it too far or anything like that. There are times when you're wondering, okay, why does Moxley have to blade here? Why did Ric Flair have to blade there? There's been plenty of times throughout history, not just AEW, believe it or not, throughout history in a lot of different promotions that we question whether or not things go too far. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And in this case, the blood made it better. That's what you want blood to do. You don't want to bleed so much that blood doesn't mean anything anymore. And that's some of the criticisms that AEW has heard in the past about the overuse of blood. In tonight's case, even though we had a lot of blood, I do not consider it overuse. I was fine with the amount that we had. We probably won't see a match in which two competitors lose that much blood for quite some time. And it wasn't overdone in my mind. And we knew we were going to get some blood later in that cage match. There was no way we were not going to. So I think up until this point, they had kept the blood in check. Now, if we had seen up until then, we were what, 5 matches in? That was the 6th match. So if we had seen blood in all 5 of the other matches, yeah, I would say, okay, this is too much. But in the context of Toni and Mariah, I loved that ring was covered in blood. I loved that. I loved that it was stained and disgusting. That's what I want. I mean, that's the way that feud should have ended. And it was just such a violent yet elegant close and ending, just with the 2 of them laying there. Once I'm done, I'm going to make that. That's going to be the thumbnail of this video. Once we shut off and go live, or I stop going live and update it. It was great. It was tremendous. So I can't say enough good things about that match. That was easily my favorite match of the night. It was brutal. It was violent. It was elegant, and it perfectly ended the story between these two that has been one of my favorite feuds in recent history. In the last 10 years, it's top 5 easily. Shit, it's top 3 easily. Maybe the last 15 years, top 5. But it was good. Great stuff. Major props to Toni Storm and Mariah May. Nurse your wounds, rest up, have a cold one. You both earned it. That's for damn sure. Kenny Omega challenging Konosuke Takeshita for the International Championship was up next. Fun match here. Really fun match. I mean, it was exactly what we expect from these guys. We've seen them wrestle before. Kenny has suffered 2 losses to Takeshita. And when you compare it to their other matches, the All-In one, and I forgot where the other one was, it was fine. Kenny, after his injury and all that time off, he still is in top form. He's not the Kenny of old, but he's still wrestling at a high level. He can still do great shit in there. Still has a lot of strength. With some of those one-winged angel attempts, Takeshita is a big boy. And the match in the ring was perfectly fine. I wouldn't say this match exceeded my expectations. No, I think it matched them. This is exactly in my head what I was envisioning from Kenny and Takeshita. Maybe not the finish, though. The finish was quite abrupt. It was kind of like a crucifix-ish type of roll-up there that Takeshita initially kicked out of, but then Kenny persevered, got him back. He kind of lost one of the arms, but he rolled up the leg instead and kind of got Takeshita in a quick pin for the win, to win the International Championship. So he wins. He gets the celebration at the end. They even have pyro for him. And now he's the International Champion. And like I said, I'm hoping that they unify the Continental Classic title with this one. And you do Kenny and Okada at All In July. Because I don't really think you need both of these belts. I like the International Championship, the look of it, the physical belt. I like it more than the Continental Classic. But if one of these belts is going to get absorbed into the other, it's probably going to be the International Championship disappearing and Continental Classic swallowing that up. Or you just do a title for title match. I don't know. But at this point, I would just, I just think three singles championships, or 3 secondary singles championships, I should say, is too much. I mean, WWE just has 1, right? So I think, or I guess they have 2 with the IC and the in the US, but I think you need to get rid of 1 and have the TNT and the Continental/International kind of be on equal footing with each other instead of having a 3rd belt in there. So I think unifying those is the right thing to do, and he should. My God. Up next, this thing started out awesome from the fucking entrances, man. I mean, from the minute the lights went out here and Kyle Fletcher started coming out, you could just feel it. You could just feel it, man. It was brewing. And so Fletcher comes out. First thing he does is climb to the top of the cage, and he stands on the truss there that's holding the cage together on the top, waiting for Ospreay to come out, standing straight up on that thing, just with his arms out. It was awesome, waiting for Ospreay to come out. Then Ospreay has this elaborate digital type of intro before his music hit that lasted about 30 seconds, maybe longer, maybe a minute. Goes through this whole thing. He's voicing it and he's saying stuff, and then it kind of goes into his theme. And he comes out to the ring and he climbs up to the cage as well. And you have this just absolutely fucking amazing camera shot of Ospreay in one corner, standing on top of the cage in the 2 corners, these guys diagonal from each other. And Ospreay climbs up there at the very moment, and he stands up at the very moment that the theme song goes into that Ospreay, Ospreay. And he's standing, the camera shows both of these guys with Ospreay with his arms out while the fans do the Ospreay, and Fletcher with his back turned on the other side with his fingers in his ears. It looks so good. And I'm like, oh, this match is going to be crazy. This match is going to be absolutely crazy. I really think that Kyle Fletcher has the potential to be this generation's Randy Orton. Still remains to be seen if he can accomplish that. But man, the tools are there. The frame is there. He's got everything. He's got the size. He's got the charisma. He's insane in the ring. And I feel like guys like him will only get better. So in time, we will see. But I feel like maybe not this generation's Randy Orton, but maybe AEW's Randy Orton, as long as Fletcher doesn't fall into the trap of being unused for 3 months and we don't see him and wonder where the fuck he is and all that stuff. If you feature him and push him routinely and frequently, I think he can be a big deal. Did not think he was going to win here, though. I felt like this is going to be Ospreay's match to win. And from top to bottom, it was fantastic. These guys got gnarly right away. We had both guys getting busted open basically at the hands of the cage. I think Ospreay got busted open first, and he bladed pretty hard. It wasn't Toni Storm levels, but I felt like it was a little bit excessive. I'm like, oh, I don't know if he meant to blade that hard, because as soon as he hit the cage, I mean, he had just pouring down blood. And then Fletcher takes Ospreay's head, and he rubs it on the cage, staining his blood on the mesh, and then goes in and licks it. Sick fuck. This match was definitely for the sickos. And it wouldn't be the only time that there was blood drinking in this match, because Ospreay would do it later near the end. He would lick his hand or something. Both of these guys were covered in head to toe in blood. It was so nuts. We had thumbtacks out there, and Kyle Fletcher took a very gnarly bump on the thumbtacks, basically stomach and abdomen first, and he was wearing short little trunks too, so he had thumbtacks all in his abdomen, all in his dick. He might have had a thumbtack in his dick hole, definitely had one in his balls. It was just a sick-ass bump. Don Callis was very, very involved in the Kenny Omega and Takeshita match, and he was back out here for this as well, getting involved. We had Mark Davis coming down to the ring with a bag full of weapons, and he's got a bolt cutter with him. He breaks the chains off the door, gets in the ring to throw the bag of weapons in there. Then Ospreay comes through and kicks the door in his face. He goes flying backwards, and he's on the outside of the ring the whole time. I kind of forget about him, but he comes up later all bloody. So now he came out there basically just to get the bag in the ring. They now shut the door. Now we got weapons. We've got a barbed wire baseball bat, and we have the thumbtacks that I mentioned earlier on. So Mark Davis bringing that in, he added all of that to the ring. Later on, he would reemerge all bloody from the cage door to the face, and Ospreay would wind up taking him out. Fletcher at this point is starting to run away. He's trying to run. Now, this is not an escape the cage match here or stipulation. This is pinfall or submission only. So he's trying to run away a couple of times. Ospreay chases him up to the near side of the cage. Or before that, I'm sorry, Fletcher is climbing out the far corner, and up there, when he gets to the top, he's got a screwdriver planted, and he nails Ospreay in the head with it. He goes flying back. So the screwdriver is back at play. Ospreay even, or one of them, I think Fletcher stabs it into the turnbuckle pad, and it sticks there at one point. So then Ospreay and Fletcher are both up at the top of the cage again, where the screwdriver comes into play, and Ospreay this time is the one to take it and nail Kyle Fletcher with it. And then he takes it and throws it down on the floor, but it bounces and goes flying into the audience. So I'm really curious if we've got an audience member with a screwdriver in the eye. Hopefully not. And nobody got hurt in the flying screwdriver. Never thought you'd have to worry about flying screwdrivers at wrestling shows, but apparently you do. And then they were both up at the top there, and you could tell what they were going to do. I was nervous as shit. I was losing my mind in the watch-along because I watched them. I'm like, they're going to Spanish fly. They're going to Spanish fly off the top of that thing. And you got chairs, you got barbed wire bats, you got thumbtacks laying in that ring, and they're going to Spanish fly off the top of the cage. And I don't think they could have landed any better. It was so perfect, so safe. I was so worried one or both would die here, and they just perfectly executed it. They might have landed in a few tacks, but they didn't land in the big pile of tacks. And both guys stayed relatively safe. I loved the finishing sequence here. Finally, Will Ospreay hitting, and he always hits these perfectly, but it was one of the best hidden blades I've ever seen. And Kyle Fletcher took it straight to the face, and I think it was a Tiger Driver, right? That did him in. Finally, 1, 2, 3. And Will Ospreay wins one of the best steel cage matches I've ever seen. It was so much fun. Much like Toni and Mariah May, I feel like there could be some debate here. Oh, was there too many spots? Were there too many kickouts? All that type of stuff. All of that stuff is usually argued in bad faith. And again, it just depends on the situation with me. There have been matches that I've watched that I felt like we got a little bit too many kickouts, a few too many kickouts. But there are some matches where I like them. You know, Kenny Omega, after taking, what did he take from Takeshita? A couple of those moves, and then he kicked out at 1. That stuff doesn't bother me. It's ruining wrestling. No, it isn't. Wrestling is as hot as it's ever been. It's not ruining anything. Wrestling isn't going anywhere because guys kick out of moves too much. So a lot of the old timers have these opinions, and then it spills over into the wrestling audience because they think it makes them seem smart. It does not. And when you start nitpicking shit like that, I feel like there are definitely times where you can have a match that is doing kickouts for the sake of kickouts, or is doing blood for the sake of blood. I'm not saying those matches don't exist. They do. And when those come up, there are times and places to make those critiques. But it doesn't apply to this match, just like it didn't apply to Toni and Mariah. This is where I want the blood and violence. This is where I want the insane kickouts. If you got Kyle Fletcher and Will Ospreay in the ring together, I expect insane near falls, and I want 30 of them. It does not bother me how many there are, you know, but I wouldn't have wanted that in Edge and Copeland, or Copeland and Mox, excuse me, because that's a different match with different people. Just depends, you know. So here, this is the type of match where I expect that type of shit. I expect it in Kenny and Takeshita. I don't expect it in Hurt Syndicate and Outrunners, you know? So it just depends. And I think when fans try to have blanket opinions about everything, they realize that that doesn't work. And then when you're also arguing in bad faith, it just makes you sound dumber. So I feel like that type of discourse, if you're hearing it online, just ignore it. Those matches were awesome. It wasn't too much blood. It wasn't too many kickouts. It wasn't too many spots. It was fucking perfect. It was great. Loved every fucking second of it. So Ospreay and Fletcher delivered. Did Cope and Mox deliver? Yes and no. I feel like the finish to that match is probably angering a lot of fans. And the match quality was a little slower. I mean, these are two veterans here. They're not going to give us what Fletcher and Ospreay just did. So the fans, I think, were a little bit burnt out or blown up after that just crazy cage match. So they were kind of quiet throughout the duration of the match. And we knew it might pick up at the end with some surprises, but I didn't think in the ring we were going to get anything too crazy. And the match was, in my mind, just okay. Kind of how Okada and Brody King didn't really exceed my expectations. It just kind of matched them. I got to say the same thing here for Mox and Copeland. They didn't do anything that really exceeded any of my expectations at all. This is kind of the type of match I thought we would see. I thought we might get a little crazier at the end with a cash in, but we did get a cash in. It just wasn't crazy. I also thought that maybe Wheeler Yuta and Jay White could do a double turn. They both showed up. Wheeler Yuta showed up first, and he really telegraphed it. You know, they had the handshake on Wednesday with Copeland telling him, hey, this is what respect feels like. So Yuta shows up here in the match as Moxley and Copeland are both rising to their feet, but it was like you didn't even doubt it. You knew he was going to hit Cope, and he did. He hit Cope. They start beating him down. Out comes Jay White, and him and Yuta just brawl off screen. They just brawl into the back, so they're not even a factor. No heel turn, no double turn, no nothing. So then Cope winds up hitting Moxley, I think, with a couple of spears, hits him with what's going to be the match-ending spear when a hooded figure pulls the referee out of the ring to reveal that it's Christian. He's got the contract. He presents it right there to the referee. He signs it. And now this match is a triple threat. And Moxley immediately grabs hold of Christian and just locks him in a choke and chokes him out. And Christian taps out, or he passes out, or whatever. Referee calls for the bell. Moxley retains. And I actually loved that finish. I loved that they paid off the Christian contract. I thought they would wait until Killswitch was healthy before doing anything like that. But he might not be coming back for a while, and they got to get that contract out of the way. It's just hanging over our heads. If he's not going to win the title, let's go ahead and wrap this thing up. And him coming out there and screwing Cope and then losing the match, that allows for Cope now to, number one, stay strong or have another title shot or grounds for a rematch in the future. And the finish might have been a little bit underwhelming because I think fans get excited about title changes. I would have loved to see Cope win the title here, but it just felt like ending the Death Riders story here at Revolution with all of the Death Riders being picked off one at a time, then Moxley losing would have been weird. I feel like there's a different end game that they have in mind, and this wasn't it. Plus, Swerve won the number one contenders match earlier on against Ricochet, so Swerve and Moxley makes a lot more sense than Swerve and Cope to me. And we saw that confrontation at the end as Mox grabs the briefcase and starts leaving. He's confronted by Prince Nana in the little exit there from the crowd. And then we see Swerve standing up on the banister or the balcony, and he jumps off onto Moxley to kind of close the show. So now I don't know if that's going to be our next program into Wrestle Dynasty or if Mox and Swerve is going to be a Dynamite match. I'm kind of hoping at this point it's going to be our pay-per-view match, and Moxley will survive one more pay-per-view before finally dropping the belt at Double or Nothing, hopefully to Darby Allin, who has survived his trip to Mount Everest. He might not. So if Darby dies, then somebody else is going to have to take the title off of Jon Moxley. Perhaps Bryan Danielson. Maybe Danielson is, in case of Darby death, break open glass. Maybe that's what Danielson is. Copeland tonight was wearing Seattle colors. I thought it might have been a subtle hint to a Danielson return. Maybe he'd show up at the main event or at the end of the main event here and help Cope win or something. So we didn't see any of that, but we did see the Christian cash in, and he failed that cash in worse than any briefcase holder ever did, I think. My God, that was quite the fumble and the fail there from Christian, who didn't even have any backup out there. Nick Wayne, none of that. None of those guys were out there trying to help him, or increase his chances. You should have had Sabian and Nikki out there helping out, but they weren't. And Moxley retains the AEW championship in what I believe was a fantastic pay-per-view. Tons of fun. I'm not going to give it an A+. I'm going to give it an A. Just want to be fair. Don't want anybody thinking I'm sucking the AEW dick too hard here, but an A. This show's getting an A. Thought it was fantastic. All right. We have super chats to answer. Let's see what the chat has to say about all this. If anybody hasn't hit my thumbs up button yet, please do. We'll knock out these super chats, and then I will get out of here because I've got things to do tonight, and we're going to be back tomorrow watching Monday Night Raw together. You know what? I don't think I can see all of the super chats, so I'm going to go to the master list here because I think too much time has passed. So we'll knock out these, see what else you guys have to say, and then I will be bolting. Do kids still say bolting? Is bolting still a thing? Never forget watching the Olympics one time on or what? I think it was the Olympics or something like that at work when I was managing a restaurant. It was Usain Bolt, and he was like winning. I just remember one of the servers coming up and going, "His name's Bolt." And this is funny, like innocent voice. I'm like, "Yeah, his name's Bolt." All right, let me see where we left off here. I think I read that one. Mike Witt, I think I got that. Where did we leave off? Okay, here we go. Mike Witt, that was the last one I read, I believe, about Moxley ever going back to the WWE, and I believe that anything is possible. If Punk went back, anybody can go back. So yes, and Mike Witt, you've got two more. Swerve, your only hope. You mean to beat Moxley, he might be our only hope, but I think Darby is going to be the guy. I think AEW, this whole thing, Moxley being a world champion that's kind of overstaying his welcome, I think that might make the victory all that much more sweeter because it's Darby. It's not going to be just anybody beating Moxley. This is going to be Darby, one of the most over baby faces. And I think before Darby dies, you want to make him world champion. So this is the year to do it. I think they've already set that up last year. That's what they're going towards. And when Darby returns and targets Moxley and He'll win the title and he'll get the big moment, the big celebration, and fans are going to be happy to see that. I feel like it'll be worth the wait. And that's what AEW has to try to do here. They have to make sure that all this waiting they're making us do is worth the wait. So if they're going to put the title on Darby, that's the end game. Make sure that whole piece of business is good. That way you don't look back at this whole thing as a waste. 5 more from Mike. A minus. Okay. Would have been an A, but the main event was kind of underwhelming. That's fair enough. And Toni and Mariah was your favorite match. So was mine. Spartan Sprinkles. Thank you for that. $2, my friend. Edge really hates the Shield members. Yeah, he does, doesn't he? He does. Ruben Anthony's got 5 for us with 9 correct predictions tonight. That brings the total correct predictions to 18 on the year for good mic work. Okay. So 9 correct, and I got all 5 of them correct on Elimination Chamber, right? Or all 4? Because you probably don't count the Cody Rock segment. Do you, Ruben Anthony, happen to know 18 out of how many matches? Like, what's my percentage? And what's our agreement again? You're going to donate however many correct predictions I get for the year. You're donating a certain dollar amount to that, and I am going to match it. So whatever we do, we're going to, I forgot what, have we picked a charity yet? I forgot. But anyway, me and Ruben, we got a partnership going. We're going to be doing a charity donation at the end of the year. And Jay Lambo, thank you so much for the $2. Mariah May versus Toni, 10 out of 10 for me. Me too, man. Me too. So tonight's pay-per-view was not perfect. I feel like main event slightly overwhelming, even though I wasn't disappointed in the outcome. I feel like Darby just beating Moxley is what we should just do here, and I'm okay with waiting for that. But I will agree that it was a bit underwhelming. I think you could have just done Hurt Syndicate against Outrunners on Collision, so maybe that was an unnecessary match to have. But every other match was fantastic, man. Really enjoyed it. Ospreay and Fletcher and Mariah May and Toni Storm, both of them exceeded their expectations. Every other match matched my expectations, and maybe Cope and Mox was slightly under them. But overall, the pay-per-view exceeded my expectations in the long term, or overall, I should say. Good stuff. A lot of fun. It's a great time to be a wrestling fan. And tomorrow night, we got a big Monday Night Raw in Madison Square Garden that's going to have a cage match of its own on there. I don't think we're going to see screwdrivers, thumbtacks, and buckets of blood in that one, but it's still going to be pretty good. And I have a feeling we are going to see the return of the Tribal Chief. He's going to come in and fuck up that match somehow and set up that Mania triple threat that we are likely to get. It has been a tremendous 4 or 5 hours hanging out with you guys tonight. Thank you so much for being here and sticking around for the review and watching the pay-per-view with me. It was so much fun. We will be back tomorrow night for Raw. Keep a lookout for the link later on tonight, and I'll be looking forward to hanging with y'all tomorrow night for some WWE Raw. Have a good one. Peace.